Hey everybody, John Steen here from Queen City Clay. Today we're going to talk about the political divide in the United States. No. Actually, we're going to talk through tap centering, trimming a lid, and throwing a knob. All right, so the first thing we need to do is check out our lid. This is at a really good leather hard, and by that I mean there's no wiggle whatsoever in the clay. It's stiff, but it hasn't started changing color. It's nowhere near that bone dry phase. So this is right where we want to trim. I am first going to make sure that it's a good fit on this jar. And that's nice and snug, and it's dropping all the way down to the lid seat in there. If it was a little tight, I could always trim some of this edge right here, which is one handy reason to leave your piece on the bat. And if this was a different style of lid, I might actually trim this on the bat, which I think I mentioned in the other video. But because I'm going to be throwing a knob right in place eventually, I don't want water and slip to get down in this groove and cause this to stick. So instead I'm going to trim right on the wheel head. So I'll set this down. And we have these rings in the wheel head, these lines on, this is a Shimpo, but we have mostly Brents here. They all have these same lines. So those help you get a sense of center. But if you're in between somewhere, you kind of have to eyeball it and guess. And a lot of people learn to use their finger or a needle tool, touch, and push away from you. So what you're doing is finding that widest point in the wobble where it's farthest away from center and then pressing in the opposite direction. And that works, and that's what most of us do for a really long time. One thing I wanted to talk about today though is tap centering, which you may have seen somebody do in your studio or on YouTube, where you are pressing and tapping from one side at a certain point in the rotation to get the piece to find center. And it's really nice if you throw with a lot of texture, if you have faceted pieces, because it's the weight of the piece that's going to stop right in center. And so if your piece has a little bit of inconsistency, it's not going to mess you up. But to practice, what you're looking for here is to be able to find that widest point where it's furthest away. So I just exaggerated a little bit so you can see it coming towards my finger. This is my right finger, so it's sitting right at 3 o'clock. I want to watch for that widest point to approach the very, very top of the wheel, straight in front of me, but not quite be there yet. So I want to watch for that widest point to be coming towards the top. And when that happens, I'm going to tap in down here with my right hand at about 3 or 4 o'clock. And you get into a little bit of a rhythm, and you can get it into the center. So this takes a lot of practice. I often tell my students it's a little bit like learning to ride a bike, where if you did it for a few minutes every day, it probably wouldn't add up. You got to spend some time until it clicks, and then you just know it and you'll never forget. The nice thing about this technique, besides it saving a little bit of time, is that if I get a little bit of water on my rim or on the wheel head, I can actually create some suction and get this to stay in place. So to do that, my left hand's just gently resting on the top here with no downward pressure, just making sure that this guy doesn't fly anywhere I don't want it to fly. And again, I'm watching for the widest point of that wobble to approach the very, very top. If we're thinking about this as a clock face, to be approaching 12 o'clock. My right hand's going to tap in just below 3 o'clock. And because of that sliding action, you can give a little pat down, almost like the lid of Tupperware. Now I've got some suction, and this guy's gonna stay put. If not, you might have to do a few more taps. That way I don't have to use lugs. So there's nothing wrong with using lugs, but on a form like this, if I want to trim all the way down here, now I can access that clay without getting into trouble. Okay, so now I have the piece secured to the wheel, it's centered, and I am ready to start trimming. It's important when we're trimming a lid to remember and kind of have a mental picture of what that curve was like on the inside when we threw the form upside down. So I'm trying to picture that right now, and I know that I have some extra clay from about here and all the way through the middle, and it's helpful to feel that center section to see how much clay you actually need to remove. It might be quite thick, or you might not need to take much at all off from here in the very center. But I want to get rid of this extra clay now, and I'm going to use a trimming tool like this. I tend to use a little bit larger loop tool. Don't like those small ones as much personally, and I like the style that has a thicker side and a thinner side. So we often call this the nose here at Queen City Clay. So I'm gonna use the nose of the tool for the majority of the work. And the way that I hold this is kind of like so. I've got my index finger just running along the handle, the rest of my fingers wrapping around. So that way I am using the loop tool just kind of like an extension of that index finger. And as I put pressure down, just with my index finger, I'm controlling the tip. And I'm holding it way up here towards that loop. That's important to have that kind of control. I've got my elbows down on my legs. I've got my hands together, so you can see my thumb from my left hand touching that knuckle on my right hand. And I'm gonna put my middle finger in the center. So that just helps to make sure that I don't lose this piece, have it come flying off. And that way I've got this nice triangle from my legs through my arms of stability and support. The biggest mistake I see beginners making in the studio is centering and working with their wheel speed way too fast and trimming too slow. So I love Markstrom trimming and I think they're wonderful, but when you're just learning, if your wheel's going slow, as you start to remove material, you'll take it away from one side before it gets all the way around. So I want a nice medium to medium fast wheel speed here. And I'm gonna look for a nice 45-degree angle. I wanna find the point where these ribbons of clay are shooting off. Okay, so if it's too flat, not gonna get much clay coming off. And if it's too sharp, it might start to bounce and give me a chatter. So somewhere in between is what I'm looking for. And I'm gonna find that, get these ribbons shooting off, start towards the top, and work my way down. Okay, and you can see these ribbons got a little bit wider. If there's any unevenness in the top, if you threw this off of the hump maybe, and when you cut it off it's a little bit crooked, I want to start close to the center. And that way I can press down a little bit, get that uneven surface moving through the loop of the tool as I continue out. If I come down too flat right away, try to take this entire surface down, what happens is I ride that surface and it becomes more and more uneven. So instead, I'm going to start towards the center, get underneath it, and slowly move out. Okay, so it's the nose doing the work here. I know that it's much flatter the way that I threw this lid, so I need to bring this top down. Kind of checking back in with that mental picture of what this looked like. And because I was able to tap center this, and use a little bit of water to get it to stick, I don't have those lugs, I can come all the way down here. And it's not that I have a whole lot of extra clay to get rid of here, I just want to touch that clay with the loop tool. So that way the surface quality is the same from the center all the way out. I don't have a transition point where it looks like I stopped. So that looks pretty good to me. You'll see potters tapping sometimes. What you get is kind of a higher pitch sound when you have a thinner wall and kind of a duller thud where it's thick. But that doesn't work out too well for me because I find that if you trim a little bit wetter, a little bit drier at different times, it's gonna sound different anyways. Now what I wanna walk you through is throwing a knob. So the first thing I'm gonna do is add a little bit of water on here. I'm gonna use a needle tool, and as the wheel's spinning, I'm gonna score. Let the wheel do the work, so I get a lot of score marks in here. Then I'm gonna get a little bit of clay. And anytime I'm working small amounts of clay, they have a tendency to dry out pretty quickly. So I'm gonna get a little bit of water on my fingers and just massage it in from the very beginning. Handles and knobs, all these small attachments, I want there to be soft, soft clay. So at first it's kind of slippery, then it gets kind of sticky. And right about now, it's no longer sticking to my hand. That's right where I want it. I'm gonna roll a ball or something close to a ball. Then I'm going to flatten out one side. So I'm gonna take my fingers and my thumb and press down and turn and turn and turn. Try to get some symmetry going and get a little bit of a gumdrop or a Pac-Man ghost kind of shape going here. And I'm gonna score the bottom of that. The reason I flatten the bottom rather than just starting out with a ball is because if I had a ball, I'd have all of this negative space right here to fill in. We're having this one flat side. Now I've got good contact. So I'm not gonna really use any slip. I'm just gonna score, add some water, and score again. And when I put this on, I wanna make sure it's pretty close to center. So that looks good. I'm going to press down and give it a twist. I'm wiggling this back and forth. That helps those scored sides to really meet up and interlock. And I'm gonna do that in a few different places, trying to do the same kind of action. So I'm spinning the wheel little by little, can even spin it by hand. All right, now I feel like it's on there. So the next thing I'm gonna do is take my thumb and slide down to really blend the two together. And I'm going to slowly turn the wheel, try to repeat that action in every single place. So you'll see as it comes around, I'll get my index fingers out of the way in a second. I'm not leaving deep finger marks. I'm not putting in any kind of deep mark that I need to take away. Those fingers are just kind of there for stability. So I'm just trying to make the same action happen everywhere. So it's not centered, but it's pretty close. It's not in bad shape. I'm gonna drag my finger, smooth out this seam to make sure that this clay is well attached before I do anything else. So other than softening the clay, I haven't added any water at this point. It's still nice and strong. Now what I'm gonna do is put some water on the knob. And it's for this reason right here that I'm not finishing this lid in place. I don't want water and slip getting in my lid gallery, in my lid seat. What I'm gonna do now is take all of my fingertips. Our general rules with clay are that we can use more of our hand when we have a thicker piece of clay. So right now I'm gonna get a lot of my fingers down low. I've got my pinky, ring, and middle fingers all squeezing in. If it was a larger knob, I might have my index finger too. And I'm gonna squeeze straight in towards the center. My thumbs are helping on the back side, and I'm gonna slowly come up. So it's a little bit like coning, when we did coning in a previous video. What I'm trying to do is gain control of the lower part of this knob. I wanna drive in until this whole knob gets a little bit more narrow and is under control. And then I'm gonna slowly move up, carrying that control with me. And you'll see I'm left with a little bit of a wobble at the top here. Now I can either support the sides with my thumb and a couple of fingers of my left hand and compress down on the top with my right finger to regain control, just like we're centering if you're making a tiny, tiny pot. Or if you have trouble with that, you could use a needle tool and just trim the top off completely, and that's okay too. All right, so now I have a centered lump of clay. At this point, I want to start thinking about the shape. I can continue to press down on the top and drop this lower and lower. Can you see that kind of mushroom fold starting to happen on the side? I might want that style of knob so that way I have something to hold on to. If I don't, and I want to bring this whole piece down lower, I can use my thumb and middle finger of my left hand to apply gentle pressure in so it doesn't get too wide or want to peel away. I'm constantly adding a little bit of water, just getting my fingers wet to make sure that this slides. If it grabs my hand at any point, I could really be in trouble. I think a good rule of thumb is if you're not sure what style of knob to make, you might want to look at your pot and mimic something that's going on there. So again, this is the pot that I am making this lid for. So I've got these rounded sections. So one option might be to just do a single rounded section that fits in well with the pot. I could also open this small piece of clay up. Got wet fingers on the outside just for support, so my right hand has something to hold on to, and my index finger is going to drive down till I touch that lid. And I can come down with just wet fingertips and do a little pull. So I could decide that I want this to be a hollow knob. If I wanted to, I could wet my fingers, collar in, and continue collaring till that clay meets, pinch off some of that extra, and make a trapped air knob. And if I go that route, it's important to remember to poke a hole from the underside so that way the steam can escape during firing. Those are all options for you, and it really depends on the pot. But no matter what you do, you want to come back with some kind of rib. I've got a metal one handy here, but those mud tool ribs work really well. Clean up this surface so that way it matches the surface of the pot. Because I have that suction going on right now, I'm gonna have to hold onto this lid, slowly spin the wheel to get it to come off. And There you go. So give it a try. There are certain videos you would like to see, certain techniques you'd like to see demonstrated. Please let us know. We'd love to hear about it, and we're going to keep sending you some more content. Thanks for checking it out.